tragedy that befell humanity in general and Ahl-e-Bait in particular. And just to understand what a powerful and an important event it was for humanity to be deprived until the day of judgment from the presence of a messenger of Allah. It is enough for us to know that although Ahl-e-Bait had many great tragedies that befell them, the martyrdom of Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha and the circumstances of her martyrdom, alone, oppressed, injured, grieving, such that she said that if the day were to suffer what I suffered, and the sun would not shine, and light would turn to darkness. That tragedy, that even till today we don't know where is the grave of the beloved daughter of the Prophet. We know the graves of even minor companions of the Prophet, whether they be in Medina or as far as the suburbs of Istanbul where Abu Ayyub al-Ansari is buried. Even the companions, major and minor, in Damascus, in Medina, in Mecca, and in the frontiers of the Muslim world we know. And the Muslims honored those graves, and even till today they visit them. And there is a shrine or a grave. But the beloved daughter of the Prophet, till today, no shrine, and we only can go to Medina and say somewhere is the grave of Fatima al-Zahra. What a grave tragedy it was. And Imam Ali says that what gives me consolation is that if Allah caused even the most beloved of His creation, Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to die, then nobody is destined to live forever. Imagine that at such a great tragedy like the loss of Fatima Zahra, the memory of an even greater tragedy is what gives consolation to Imam Ali and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein and Zainab and Kulthum. And what a great tragedy was it for our Prophet to no longer be in this world. And that tragedy is for all of humanity and all of creation, because our Prophet was rahmatun lil alameen. But many people, they don't know or recognize what they were blessed with through the Prophet. This tragedy, although it befell all of God's creation and all of humanity, but it was felt by those who knew the Prophet. And it was felt most by those who knew the Prophet best. And so the greatest recognition of what the loss of the Prophet's presence was by Ahl-e-Bait themselves. And the attachment and the feeling of that loss, I gave you one example from Amir al-Mu'mineen, but all of us are familiar with a very beautiful example on the day of Ashura, when Imam Hussein is bidding farewell to his son Ali Akbar. And those of us who are parents, and we pray for the life and the success and the blessings of our children, we can only imagine what it is like for a parent not to lose a child, but to send a child to death with your own hands. There are some in our families and in our communities, maybe they have lost a child And in some way, I imagine they can better understand the feelings of Ahl-e-Bait, who went through that greatest test, and that greatest tragedy, better than maybe somebody like myself can understand. I can only imagine, but I have not experienced a loss. But even they cannot fully understand what it was for Imam Hussein to say to Ali al-Akbar, "Come, my son, for I want you to be the first martyr from the family of the Prophet." And then imagine, now what was the love? A father is bidding farewell to his son. He is preparing his son for the battle, but who does he remember? Rasulullah. And maybe this was the wisdom of Allah, that He made Ali Akbar to be the most similar of Ahl-e-Bait to Rasulullah, so that when that difficult test was asked of Imam Hussein, a test at the like of which even the hand of Ibrahim Khalilullah would shake, then he gave strength and consolation to Imam Hussein that this is the path of Rasulullah, whom you are sending forth. Yes, his name is Ali Akbar, but he is also Shabih Rasulullah. He is the likeness and the very exact copy of our Prophet in his physical features and in his character and in his speech. And because of the love of Imam Hussein for Rasulullah, that provided strength for our Imam at that difficult time. These are just two incidents that can illustrate for us what is the event that we are remembering tonight and inshallah in tomorrow's majlis, the loss of the most beloved of God's creation. The one who has a greater right on our life and our soul even than our parents, even than our families, even than those that we are closest to and nearest and dearest to. Yes, Allah mentions our obligation to our parents right after Tawheed. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. And then right after Tawheed, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. But even greater than your walidain, your parents, is the right of Rasulullah. Because your parents, they raised you, and they are the means by which your physical body came into this world and is sustained. Rasulullah is the means by which your soul is sustained and is able to attain eternal life and salvation. And yes, our physical body is our means of worship of Allah, but it is only a vehicle for our soul. The greater right is the one who is a parent, a guide, a teacher of my soul, even greater than my own parents. So we learn from our Prophet and his life, and the greatest way that we honor our Prophet is by taking the essential message that will allow us to continue to be on his path and further his mission. Because our Prophet, he did not come to unite Arab tribes and to start a new political system in the world. Some people, they talk about the golden age of Islam. They talk about the advances in science and technology and trade and art and architecture that took place in Islamic civilization, all of those are the benefits and the byproducts of that greatest gift that was brought by our Prophet, but they were not the purpose. Allah did not send His Prophet so that a few centuries later people will build Al-Hamra in Andalusia, or all of the beautiful Masjid in Istanbul, or Taj Mahal in India, Masjid and mausoleums and other architects that remember different dynasties and empires. These were not the purpose. Or to have a more accurate astronomical table than before, or to have advances in medical science. All of those are achievements. And the achievements of Muslim history and civilization are things that Muslims should remember and that we should build upon. We shouldn't let anybody take away our history and say that Muslims did not contribute everything to the caravan of human civilization and history. But what we contributed is actually not these things, but the legacy that we were given by our Prophet, and which was protected and preserved by Ahl-e-Bait alayhim as-salatu was-salam. So what I want us to balance our remembrance of is we have extremes. Some people that will say that, modern society, liberal democracy, post-enlightenment civilization, it has produced so much technology and advancement, and it is almost as if they think that the world was in darkness until these secular societies came and all of a sudden humanity is in bliss. And that is wrong. We should not look down upon and forget or be allowed to neglect our own history and the very real and beautiful accomplishments of that history. But then there is another extreme, which some Muslims sometimes fall prey to. They say that, this was the golden era of human society. All we need is to just go back and establish a khilafah. Well, your caliphs, from the very beginning in Saqifa all the way until the abolishment of the caliphate in 1924, exactly 100 years ago, not one of them was ever able to fully honor not my standards as a follower of Ahl-e-Bait, but even your own standards as a believer in the school of Khulafa and the standards of the Sahaba, which is based on Shura. From Saqifa, in which all of Ahl-e-Bait and the followers of Ahl-e-Bait and the vast majority of even the Muhajirin and Ansar were not present until the rest of the Umayyad and Abbasid and Ottoman history of the Caliphate. If you say it is Shura, where was the Shura? So my standards are separate. My standards are divine. Whomever Allah appointed, that is my Imam. Let us leave that aside. Your standards are Shura. Where was the Shura? Is 1400, or I should say just under 1400 years not enough to have one example? And actually, if I want to be accurate, you can bring two examples. It's not accurate for me to say that there was no consultative gathering in the history of Shura, of the Khilafah. There were two examples. But those two examples also are not in favor of those who believe in Khilafah, The first example is the allegiance to our Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi as-salatu was-salam. Where people said that the society has been corrupted so much that nobody can save us but you. And the Imam says, أَنَا لَكُمْ وَزِيرًا خَيْرٌ مِنِّي لَكُمْ أَمِيرًا. At this point, I can do more good as an advisor than I can do as a leader, because you have gone so far that you do not even recognize what is the role of an Amir and a leader, and it is not possible just to undo the damage that has accumulated over the last quarter century, 25 years of errors and deviation. And for 3 days, Imam Ali said no. And then there was the first time in the history of the caliphate a general consensus in which nobody was excluded. It wasn't just Banu Hashim. It wasn't just the Ansar who were loyal to Imam Ali. It wasn't just Ammar ibn Yasir who was a loyal follower of Imam Ali. Everybody in Medina, the Muhajirin and the Ansar and the representatives of the Muslims of the frontier from Kufa and Basra and from Syria and Egypt, all of them were present, and all of them said in the first consultative assembly that it is only Imam Ali who can restore us to the purity of the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that is the first time. And then when was the second time? The second time was at the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam in Kufa. Imam Ali made a wasiyah, and he appointed his son and his successor, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Inshallah, in 2 days you will commemorate the martyrdom of this beloved grandson of the Prophet. With what wisdom did Imam Hassan get appointed by his father? He didn't impose him on the Muslims, but he informed the Muslims that yes, you have a choice, but there is a right choice and a wrong choice. Just as a parenthesis, many people, we make that mistake. Let me give you one example. In this society, many people say that, Muslim women who wear hijab, they're forced to wear hijab. Their father forces them, their husband forces them, their brother forces them, their society forces them. And so many Muslims, we say that, no, it's not my obligation or my compulsion. My father is not forcing me, my husband is not forcing me, my brother is not forcing me. I am choosing to wear hijab, it is my choice. And yes, it is a choice. But remember, there is a difference between saying, I go to the ice cream parlor and I choose pistachio ice cream and you don't like pistachio ice cream, so you choose chocolate ice cream. That is just your choice. And even if I think that your choice is not appetizing at all, it is your choice. I cannot say that I ban Nutella flavoring because I don't like it. But then there is salat. Salat is also your choice. I cannot force you to do salat. Even if I have a whip and I force you to stand up and say Allahu Akbar and then bow down and then go into sujood, I don't know if you've actually done wudu. And even if I've seen you do wudu, I cannot compel you to make the intention that this is for the sake of Allah and not for the sake of any human being. So salat is your choice. I cannot force you to do salat, even if I can force you to do certain motions. But is this like ice cream? If you choose to do salat or choose not to do salat, is it all equal? There's a big difference. Because salat is your choice, but there is only one right choice. if you want to fulfill your obligation and you want to achieve salvation, tranquility in this life, and paradise in the hereafter, if it is your obligation, you must do salah. And when you emphasize too much that it is your choice, in reality, you are demeaning the value of making the right choice. So imagine, for example, my mother calls me and she says that she needs my assistance. Something that I have to cancel, another program that I had. Maybe I was planning on staying home and relaxing, and my mother says that you need to come to my house for 3 or 4 hours and help me with this task. Is there a right choice? Yes, I should go. Unless there is a life and death matter or something that is more wajib, but there are very few things in life that are more important or more wajib than to go and to help. Now imagine I come to my mother and I say, I'm here. I chose to come. I had a choice. I could have stayed home and watched football, but I chose to come. Was it my choice? Yes. But just to say this is my choice is itself to undermine the fact that it was the only right choice and every other choice is wrong. So brothers, when you pray, your salat is your choice. Sisters, when you wear hijab, your hijab is your choice. But the point is not that it is your choice. The point is that it is the right choice. That preserves your faith and your honor and your dignity and your religion, and gives you your identity and your affiliation, and brings you close to Allah and Rasulullah and Ahl-e-Bait alayhi salatu wassalam. And if somebody says to you that you are forced to pray, you are forced to fast, you are forced to dress modestly, then say very simply, nobody forces me. But then don't say, I choose because I am empowered. Say that I choose because I am a servant. I choose because I am a devotee, and I follow the guidance, the instruction of Allah. That is my pride, to have Allah tell me what to do. That is my honor, to have Allah inform me that this is my obligation. Ilahi kafa bi izzan an takuna li rabban wa kafa bi fakhran an akuna laka abda. My greatest honor is for Allah to be my Lord, and my greatest pride is for me to be a slave of Allah. Don't idealize your choice so much that you start thinking that you can choose whatever you want. Because the danger is that if you keep on emphasizing the choice, then one day you can say to your mother, you know what, I choose not to come. If I just think about the choice, but I don't think about the obligation, then one day shaitan will come to me and, why do you choose this? Why don't you choose something else? If I just think about the fact that it is my own decision and I don't remember the fact that there is one correct decision and one incorrect decision. One day shaitan will come to me that, well, if salat is your choice, if saum is your choice, if khums is your choice, if hijab is your choice, then why don't you choose something else sometime? And that is why it is important for us, yes, not to be forced, but also to remember that to voluntarily do what is right is a greater honor than not to recognize that we have a Lord and a Creator whose bounties place us in His debt, and we are obligated to obey Him. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
अल्लाह ताला ने हमें चॉइस दी हम उसके गुलाम हैं तो जो उसका हुक्म है कोई हमारा चॉइस नहीं.
So returning to our prophet, whose leadership, whose commandment is the source of our understanding of what is right. Our following of the prophet is a test. This is why the true difficulty, believe it or not, in Arabia was not to have people say La ilaha illallah, but rather it was to have people say
Muhammad Rasulullah.
Maybe it's surprising to think of this. Maybe it's counterintuitive that a society that worshipped 360 idols placed in the Kaaba, but many more idols in every neighborhood and in every tribal town and village in all of Arabia. Today there are some polytheistic religions, they say that they have 330 million gods. Okay. A society so steeped in polytheism and paganism, you would think the real challenge is to say La ilaha illallah. But that is not the real challenge. Because if I say La ilaha illallah, and Allah is somewhere in the sky, okay. It would have been their preference to add one more God to their existing gods. But they would have been willing even to say that I will throw aside all of those other gods and I will accept one God, as long as He's not going to interfere in my life. The real problem is Muhammadun Rasulullah, because that means that Allah is not just up there somewhere for you to imagine, but that He has sent guidance and obligations for you to follow. That is why on the conquest of Mecca, now Abu Sufyan has been defeated. And he admits that if any of his idols were able to do anything, they would have done it. He had said in the battle of Uhud that we have a Lat and you have no Lat. Oh Muslims, how are you going to win this battle? But by the conquest of Mecca, even Abu Sufyan had to admit that if Lat, if Uzza, if Hubal could have done anything, then they would have done it by now. So was he ready to say La ilaha illallah? So when Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib said to him, let's say La ilaha illallah, he said, okay, yes. Then Abbas said to him, and say Muhammadun Rasulullah. There's something in the heart, I just cannot bring myself to say this. And I would say until the end of his life, he may have said it with his tongue, but he never said it with his heart. Why? Because there is a test. And that test is to accept the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala and then to obey. I will talk a little bit about that test in greater detail tomorrow. But to introduce and begin that discussion, Allah says in Surah Al-Ankabut, Surah number 29 of the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا ويقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people think that they will be left to say that we are mu'min and that they will not be subject to a test? So this tells you that Tawheed was not the problem. Because the Quran is saying that to say Amanna is not that difficult. The difficulty, وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. That we are going to be tested? Okay, then, now I'm not so sure. This was the obstacle. And then, the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Allah tested those who came before. And He is going to test this ummah, and He will come to know and He will show who are as-sadiqeen, who are the truthful ones, alladhina sadaqu, and He will know who are al-kadhibeen, the false or the ones who lie. So interesting. There is a test. How did that test take place? Now there is a wrong history of Islam that is told to us, and there is a correction that comes from this verse of the Quran. What is the wrong history? People think that deviation comes because gradually people forget the teachings of their Prophet. Gradually, people forget the teachings of the Prophet. So Musa alayhi salam brings his law, and it was there for 1, 2, 3, 4 generations, and then gradually people began to forget, and they introduced deviation. Isa alayhi salam brought his book, and then gradually things changed. Why was this story introduced? Because there is a desire to say that the generation of the Sahaba don't raise any questions and make any objections. Don't say that this is not right. If there is deviation, it came gradually. And there were ahadith that were made. خَيْرُ الْقُرُونِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. That the best generation is my generation. Then the generation after me, then the generation after them. That the Khilafah Rashida is a perfect utopian society. After that, things will begin to get corrupted. Khilafah Rashida is good for 30 years. One generation of Sahaba is protected. Then you can say that there is monarchy and kingship. So deviation is gradual. This is the reason. But the Quran says that if you want to know how tests work, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Look at the previous ummah. All Muslims will exclude Al-Kafi. We'll exclude any book written by a scholar who is loyal to Ahl-e-Bait. Just look at the Quran and at your own books of ahadith. When did the deviation come in the ummah of Musa alayhi salam? He was still alive. And he went for 30 days, but he ended up staying for 40 days. And all of a sudden people started worshiping a golden calf. And you still see that worship and that materialism and the worship of calves and gold until the present time. So was it a gradual deviation? No. This is actually an answer given by Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. One of the scholars of Banu Israel comes to Medina and says, Ya Ummata Muhammad, O the community of Muhammad, your prophet was just buried, and already you have divisions about him. And Imam Ali says, إِنَّمَا اخْتَلَفْنَا عَنْهُ وَلَمْ نَخْتَلِفْ فِيهِ. We have divisions about carrying on the message of the Prophet. Yes, they are real. But we did not differ about the Prophet being a prophet. We did not differ about Allah. But your feet were still wet from crossing the Red Sea. And you decided not to differ about the laws or the succession to Musa, but about the oneness of Allah Himself. So how long was it? In the words of Imam Ali, their feet were still wet from that miraculous crossing of the sea. And Imam Ali is not using sarcasm, but he is saying that great miracle was still fresh in your minds. It's not history your great-grandfather told you happened 200 years ago. It literally just happened a few days ago. And all of you were witnesses. And you still denied Allah Himself. So, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. How does fitna take place? After hundreds of years? Right then. Okay, then what about Isa alayhi salam? Every Muslim, and many of these people who are opposed to the Shia and opposed to Ahl-e-Bait, go on YouTube and take a look. They're very proud to say that, you know what? The one who destroyed Christianity is St. Paul. Maybe some of you have seen those debates and read those books. Very, very proud to say that I can take down Christianity in one day. Because St. Paul, he abrogated the law, he introduced these deviations. Very well, I agree with you. How long after Jesus alayhi salam did St. Paul come? Were the Sahaba of Jesus, let's call them Hawariyun, were they alive? Yes. In fact, Paul fought with Sam'un, who was the successor appointed by Isa alayhi salam according to the early Christian schools of thought. So deviation came after 5 generations, after 500 years, gradually. These are just 2 examples. But the reality is that whenever a messenger comes and he gives a message of calling people towards Allah, then right away the opposition also comes. Shaitan doesn't say, let me give the Prophet a head start. He can win and then I'll join the race later. He is also competing, fighting, and trying to mislead people right from the same time. So then if the Quran says that the fitna of the Muslim Ummah will be similar to those of the previous Ummahs, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Why does Allah tell us وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ? He's telling us that when you are going to be tested, وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, then look at the example of the previous Ummah so you can know how you can be protected in the test that you too are going to have to undergo. So then how can I say that, well, it happened in the time of Musa right away. It happened in the time of Isa right away. But no, I don't think that it happened in the time of our Prophet right away. No. The change took place right away. And inshallah tomorrow I will explain some of the nature of that test and the relevance of that test to today. Because it's one of the ironies that those people who speak of the Ummah and those people who speak of the glory and the golden days of Islam, they are the furthest thing from standing up for justice and right in our own time. Those people who condemn the Shia for performing taqiyya do the greatest taqiyya, where those committing a genocide, well, don't want to speak about it. But we believe in taqiyya, which is not denying or hiding the truth. And the evidence is that all of our maraji' and all of our ulama and all of our scholars and all of our institutions, wherever they might be, they say that we stand with the oppressed. It doesn't matter if they are Shia or they are Sunni. Even if they are Nasibi, they are human beings. Even if they are kafir, even if they are mushrik, even if they are opposed to me, it's not a transaction. You defend my rights and I will defend your rights. I don't defend your rights for your sake. I defend your rights because of Allah. And because this is the legacy of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. And this is the mission of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. So this is the irony. That those people who want to say that, well, for the interests of the Ummah, we are going to ignore the events of Saqifa. And we are going to ignore the teachings of the Prophet. They think they are protecting the Ummah. They are the ones who betray the Ummah. And you can see that betrayal today. 2 billion Muslims, 1/4 of the human population. And our countries and our resources and our systems are not stopping an injustice. According to the wisdom of Imam Ali, if a non-Muslim lady is oppressed in the Muslim world, it is a big enough tragedy that a Muslim should die of shame. Now imagine if it's your mother and your sister and your father and your child. How much shame is there for 2 billion Muslims? So don't think that denying the history and forgetting the nature of the test is going to protect the Ummah. No. You need to know what took place in history and who was right and who was the oppressor, so that you will know how to oppose the oppressor and stand up for justice in your own time. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And that is the tragedy of the last days of the life of our Prophet. the tragedy of Ahl-e-Bait. There was a time in Syed Abi Talib where our Prophet was surrounded by enemies, and they were just the members of his family who were with him, suffering the hunger and thirst and danger of being surrounded by enemies. You would think that now when Islam has spread throughout Arabia, and Yathrib has been named Madinatun Nabi, that at least that oppression and that solitude would not return. But can you believe that now, after the Prophet has brought wisdom and wealth and spiritual prosperity and light to all of humanity in his own city, and surrounded by people who claim to be his own followers, it is his own near and dear ones who suffer the greatest oppression. In the last days, the Prophet was sick with a severe headache such that he was not able to walk. According to a hadith found in Sahih al-Bukhari and other Sahih, that when the Prophet was less weak, then he would lean on Al-Fadl ibn Abbas and Imam Ali, and he would come to lead the prayers in the Masjid, and just that short distance between his room and the Masjid, how would he come leaning on two people with the feet of the Prophet dragging on the earth because he didn't have the strength to lift his feet and take a step? Imagine the pain and the suffering of the Prophet in his final illness. He says, "Ud'u li akhi," call for me, my brother. And somebody says, "Bring so-and-so. Bring so-and-so." And they refused to let Imam Ali come to the Prophet until Imam Ali himself came. Because just as the heart of the Prophet wished to see Imam Ali, the heart of Imam Ali wished to be with the Prophet. And Imam Ali came, and the Prophet said, "This is who I was asking you to bring, but you refused." The Prophet wants to make a will. And people say that, "No, Ya Rasulullah, we have no need of your wisdom and your guidance." Is this Syed Abi Talib? Or is this Madinatul Nabi? Are those people around the mushrikeen of Makkah? Or are they the Sahaba and the companions of the Prophet? I ask history and I ask people with a conscience, what must have it been like for the Prophet in that final moment when his family comes to him? Fatima Zahra comes with tears in her eyes. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, Amir al-Mu'mineen, come. Our Prophet now is breathing his final breaths. But there is one grief that our Prophet had, which was greater than any other grief. And this was the sunnah of Ahl-e-Bait, that they would mourn for Imam Hussein before any other grief. You will hear the masa'ib of the deathbed of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. You have heard about Amir al-Mu'mineen in his final day in the month of Ramadan. And Rasulullah also, from when Imam Hussein was born, he mourned. And he taught others to mourn. Salama narrates. al-Fadl, the wife of Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, narrates. Ahl-e-Bait themselves narrate. Now in these final moments, when Ahl-e-Bait come to the Prophet, I can only imagine what a scene it must have been when there was a majlis to bid farewell to the Prophet, but to mourn for the sacrifice of Husayn ibn Ali. Because our Prophet, he was, although on his deathbed, but he was surrounded by his loved ones. Yes, Sayyidah Fatima had tears in her eyes, but she was by the side of the Prophet. Amir al-Mu'mineen was beside himself with grief, but he stood with the Prophet. Imam Hassan as a young boy, Imam Hussein, they were there. But our Prophet, according to the narration of Amir al-Mu'mineen found in Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and the same narration is found in Mustadrak al-Sahihain, non-Shi'i sources, he said that, can I tell you about the martyrdom of my grandson Hussein? He will be there in the land of Karbala, in an area called Shatul Furat. And I can smell the fragrance of that land of Karbala. This is found in Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Know the source. So if anybody says, what is the sanctity and what is the honor of the land of Karbala, you can say it is not my source, but it is your own authentic books of hadith that quote, our Prophet said to Imam Ali, do you want me to let you also smell the fragrance of Karbala, the fragrance of martyrdom, the fragrance of the blood and the sweat of my beloved grandson, as his body will be on the sand of Karbala? And as his sister Zainab will be looking from a distance, and she will turn once towards Umar ibn Sa'd and say that, oh Ibn Sa'd, will you stand witness as my brother is martyred? And even Ibn Sa'd will not be able to bear that sight, but Zainab will be looking, and from the heavens, Fatima Zahra will be looking down upon the earth as that greatest sacrifice in human history is offered for the sake of Allah. As Imam Hussein comes with his sword back in its sheath, and he lowers his forehead on the ground, and he goes into his final prostration, and he says, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. Oh Allah, I have offered everything in your path. I have given my Akbar, I have given my Asghar, I have given Aun and Muhammad, I have offered Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Oh Allah, now Hussein himself comes and he offers his life in your path. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين قتلوا أي منقلب ينقلبون